Hello, you are most welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Understanding Spirit of Anatomy on Tuesday Night Anatomy with Daniel Okwan. Today's section is going to be a revision on the connective tissue that we have already looked at. So please, if you've not watched that video, please get the video link so that you go and watch it to get more insights regarding the subject matter. I'm going to do this revision with you through some MCQs that I've set for you. I'm going to help you get the correct answers, and those which are incorrect, yes, we will justify why they are not correct. And so, without much ado, let's set the ball rolling. We begin with question number 1, and question number 1 says, which of the following is false about embryonic connective tissue? Now, option A says, it morphologically appears loose. Yes, that's a very true statement, because we get to know that there will be a lot of cells. These mesenchymal cells will be there. But of course, the fibers are underdeveloped. Therefore, morphologically, yes, it will appear loose because the cellularity, if you have more cells compared to, of course, the fibers, then of course, we know it is going to be loose. Option B says mesenchymal connective tissue is capable of giving rise to all other adult forms of connective tissue. That's a very true statement. I don't need to overemphasize this because we know that we have embryonic connective tissue, and from the embryonic state, that is where they will give rise to this adult type of connective tissue. Remember, even with the embryonic connective tissue, we have that of mucous and the mesenchymal. It is the mesenchymal type where is capable of giving rise to all other adult connective tissue forms. Option C says mucous connective tissue can be seen in the umbilical cord with its ground substance, frequently referred to as Wharton's jelly. This is a very true statement. We get to know that yes, mucous connective tissue, yes, mainly we find it in, of course, the umbilical cord, where of course the ground substance is called Wharton's jelly. But indeed, sometimes you may find this kind of mucous connective tissue in the pulp of developing tooth, in the vitreous humor, of course the nucleus pulposus of the intervertebrates. But mainly we are going to see it in, of course, the umbilical cord, and then in there the ground substance is called Wharton's jelly. Now, option D says the main cells seen in this connective tissue type are stellate-shaped fibroblasts. Yes, indeed, we are going to see the stellate-shaped cells, which are the mesenchymal cells, but not fibroblasts. Yes, fibroblasts, we see it in, of course, connective tissue proper, not fibroblasts. Okay, they're actually called mesenchymal cells. So we get to see that. So already we've seen our correct answer. Our option is D. But let's go on. Option E says this tissue has less developed fibers in the extracellular matrix. I've already indicated that because yes, it is embryonic. Yes, the fibers, the cells are not robust enough to make a lot of these kind of these kind of fibers. But the fibers are mainly going to be made by the fibroblasts. But at the embryonic stage, we have the mesenchymal, so we can produce just very little, underdeveloped, fibers. So let's try and justify this. Yes, if you look at this, this is what we call an embryonic connective tissue. Actually, this is actually what we call the mesenchymal connective tissue, which is capable of giving rise to all adult connective tissue forms. So you can see these cells, which are spindle-like or stellate-shaped, actually, such that they should have a lot of cytoplasmic processes, emerging from it. And these cells are what we call the mesenchymal cells. Now, what we see is that, yes, morphologically, it appears loose because, of course, you can see a lot of cells over here. But the fibers, they are underdeveloped. You can't really see them, okay? But then, again, what is happening is that if you compare, this is actually mesenchymal connective tissue. If you compare it to that of mucous connective tissue, yes, you also see some cells. These are the stellate cells. But, of course, you tend to see more of the fibers in the case of the mucous connective tissue. Why we see more of the fibers? Because what is happening is that, yes, the fibers make the background a bit hazy. If you see the background to be quite hazy, then of course it's going to be mucous connective tissue. Okay, so this is actually mesenchymal and embryonic connective tissue type. The cells over here are mesenchymal cells and not fibroblasts, because this is a juvenile type of connective tissue, that is why you don't tend to see this kind of fiber, because we expect that these mesenchymal cells should give rise to, of course, the fibroblasts in the adult form, so that they can make this kind of fibers, okay, so that we can see the fibers quite distinct over there. I've already indicated that in the mucous connective tissue type, we are going to find it mainly in the umbilical cord, which, of course, the ground substance, that just pale region over here, which is in between the cells and of course the fibers, is what we call the ground substance. In the case of umbilical cord, we will call it Wharton's jelly. In the case of umbilical cord, we call it Wharton's jelly. In this I mean, what one immediately now, there's that kind of umbilical cord. Over there, we are going to call it Wharton's jelly. The ground substance, that whitest thing that we will call it Wharton's jelly. So please get to know that. So we begin with question number 2, and question number 2 says, which of the following is not true about adipose connective tissue? Now, option A says it is a type of loose connective tissue and has 2 kinds. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, you get to know that for the loose connective tissue, we have areolar, we have reticular, and we have adipose tissue. So indeed, it is a type of loose connective tissue. And then we are going to see the 2 kinds. We will see, of course, the brown adipose tissue and of course the white adipose tissue, or the so-called, multilocular adipose tissue, and of course unilocular adipose tissue. We will see that. Option B says unilocular adipose tissue is relevant as a storage fuel site. This is a very true statement. You get to know that the white adipose tissue are endowed in areas like the gluteal region, in the breasts, around the eyeball, yes, in the periocular region, around the kidney, in the perinephric fat, yes, even the greater omentum, another subcutaneous layer of the skin, yes, the hypodermis. You are going to find this unilocular adipose. That's the white adipose tissue. That's a fuel, site storage, because over there, if you starve yourself, then what will happen is that they will have to be released, of course, to generate what we call energy. They have to metabolize to generate energy. We will see that. Now, option C says the newborn is well endowed with brown adipose tissue, relevant in shivering thermogenesis. Yes, indeed, that yes, the newborn, yes, because nature recognizes that there will be some mothers who may not really take care of their newborn very well, and may die out of that kind of excessive cold environment. Then what will happen is that nature has endowed the newborn with a lot of brown adipose tissue. That's the multilocular adipose tissue. But it is relevant in thermogenesis, but not shivering type of thermogenesis. Shivering type of thermogenesis is seen by the involuntary contraction of the skeletal muscles of the body during cold conditions generally. But this time around, it's not shivering thermogenesis, but it is non-shivering thermogenesis. Brown adipose tissue, the type of heat generation over there is actually non-shivering thermogenesis. Please, so it means that we've already seen our correct answer. Our answer is option C. But let's go on. Option D says adipocytes may secrete leptin, which works antagonistically to ghrelin. Yeah, this is a very true statement. You get to know that the fat cells over there, the adipocytes in adipose connective tissue, will have what we call leptin. And this leptin is very important in that's what we call the satiety hormone. This kind of hormone-like product that's made by the adipocyte will be very important, so that after eating and you are full, this hormone will be released maximally into the bloodstream to tell you that you are full and therefore you don't eat again. Therefore, it works against that hunger hormone that we call ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone, and this hunger hormone is mainly made by, of course, the enteroendocrine cells of the stomach. Talk about the pancreas, even the small intestine, as well as even the brain. Actually, the studies have shown that even the pituitary gland will make it, but mainly in the stomach. So that's a very true statement. Now, option E says this tissue is widely distributed in the gluteal region, breasts, greater omentum, hypodermis, around the kidney, and periocular regions. This is a very true statement. In the areas in the body, that kind of adipose tissue now, we are going to see some in, of course, uterine area, in your breast, when you form greater omentum, which hangs in the abdomen like an apron. Yes, in the under your skin. Yes, your skin now. Epidermis if you are under the skin, beneath it, we are going to see a hypodermis, and that's what we call the subcutaneous tissue. Again, we are going to see it around your kidney. Okay, also around your eyeball, we are going to see that one too over there. Let's try and justify these ones. So there we are. Now, generally, if you talk about adipose tissue, it's a type of loose connective tissue. Why? Because it's highly cellular compared to having a lot of fibers. Fibers are fewer, but we have a lot of cells over there. So these are all the cells. But one thing that we find is that we have 2 kinds of adipose tissue. we have what we call, yes, white adipose tissue, also known as unilocular adipose tissue, and of course brown adipose tissue, which is also known as multilocular adipose tissue. Now, one thing that we find is that generally we are going to see that the nuclei of these adipocytes will be peripherally placed. So as the cytoplasm of these adipocytes, these fat cells, get filled with fat, then what happens is that they push their nuclei to the periphery, to one side of the cell. Okay, so that's what we are going to find over here. In the case of white adipose tissue, we are going to find a single droplet of fat filling the cytoplasm. But in the case of brown adipose, if you look at it closely, it appears we have several droplets of fat filling the cytoplasm. Okay, so please, that is what we are going to see. And we said that in the white adipose tissue, it is the storage site. Okay, a fuel storage site. That's where we are going to store in the gluteal region, of course, in your breasts, in the hypodermis, all these areas, greater omentum and what have you, we are going to find this kind of white adipose tissue. In the case of brown adipose tissue, because brown adipose tissue is more vascularized than white adipose tissue, and then again, it's having more mitochondria than white adipose tissue. That is why it is essential in what we call non-shivering thermogenesis. So we get to know that it is non-shivering thermogenesis, not shivering type of thermogenesis. It is our the akwaraketona ya one for now because our brown adipose tissue be brain it doesn't have to be worried because this kind of brown adipose tissue will be very important in providing that kind of heat. But the newborn will not be shivering. There's non-shivering type of thermogenesis. Okay, so please get to know that. Now, but in the adults, mainly we find it in between the two scapulae. Scapulae being mainly that area in between the two scapulae. That is where we are going to find more of this kind of brown adipose tissue. But we have it more in, of course, women compared to that of males. Okay, so please get to know that. And that is why frequently males tend to sit around females to gain some kind of heat. Usually it's a war banada, one or bemano or banning kakra to get that kind of heat because females, yes, they tend to be endowed with a little, okay, with this kind of brown adipose tissue done, in case of the males. Now get to know that frequently what we find is that this kind of brown these adipocytes actually will be making this kind of homolyte product that we call leptin. And leptin, say the dina say it means leptin bebre abomu. Yes, it's coming from the adipocyte. But our comment it means that ghrelin bebre abomu, and ghrelin is coming from, of course, the stomach, the small intestine, leptin from small intestine, the pancreas, and even they come from the brain, the pituitary gland. Okay, so that is what we are going to find. And then one thing that you should know is that it means that this leptin and of course ghrelin are working in an antagonistic manner. So please get to know that. So we go to question number 3, and question number 3 says, which of the following about cells of the connective tissue, which of the following is not about cells of connective tissue? So which of them is not true actually? Now option A says, unlike the inactive fibrocyte, which does not produce collagenous fibers, the active fibroblast does. Now, this is where, a lot of people get confused, because we talk about the, surface blast. Whenever you hear the word blast, it means forming. Whenever you hear the word site, it means maintain. Now, there's supposed to be a T over here. Site is supposed to, maintain. But one thing that we find is that, yes, although fibroblasts will be making a lot of these, collagenous fibers, okay, getting entrapped to become inactive, okay, which now we call it fibrocyte. Fibrocyte going to maintain, but in terms of maintaining it, how do you do? Yes, if there's the need for any repair, you do it. Okay, into your kind of fibroblast, no make you fibers of the connective tissue, but you make fibers near you trap a fibroblast now or by a fibrocyte. Now the fibroblast will be endowed with a lot of cytoplasmic processes, having a lot of protein synthesis apparatus like Golgi apparatus, having a rough endoplasm together with, of course, free ribosomes. Okay. But one thing that we are going to find is that fibrocyte will be the inactive form. Inactive form, yes, indeed, is inactive, having little cytoplasmic processes as well as little protein synthesis machinery. But indeed, it may also be producing this kind of extracellular matrix by way of collagenous fibers. So this answer, yes, is a false statement. It is a false statement. Now, option B says plasma cells, which develop from B lymphocytes, present with a clock-faced nuclei and are relevant in immunoglobulin secretion. Yes, that's a very true statement. We get to know that plasma cells, yes, which are part of the wandering type of cells of the connective tissue, will have a clock face, yes, appearance in its nuclei, in their nuclei, yes, and they will be relevant in immunoglobulin production. Yes, time as they will produce immunoglobulin, so it means that they will have this kind of clock face, appearance. Let's go to option C. It says macrophages are wandering cells which are very relevant in the phagocytosis of particulate matter. Yes, that's a very true statement. You know that macrophages will be coming from, of course, monocytes, and they will be very relevant as a phagocyte. So that's what they will do. Now, option D says in healthy adults, the rarest blood cell is the basophil, with the neutrophil being the predominant type. Yes, that's a very true statement. In healthy individuals, that's in adults, yes, who are more than, yes, let's say 15 years and above, then we expect that's mnemonic, never let monkeys eat banana, you know that. And N for neutrophil, L for lymphocytes, so that's the order. M for monocyte, E for eosinophils, B for basophils. So never let monkeys eat banana will help you remember the order in which, of course, these kind of white cells, are, in the blood in terms of their population. So indeed, the rarest, if your blood blood cell are enter when the power of friend basophil. And of course, maybe when the power will be neutrophil. But in case of individuals who are less than 15 years, then what will happen is that there's some kind of reverse, phenomenon that we see. Say that instead of the neutrophil being the predominant cell, it is rather going to be the lymphocyte. So please get to know that. So that's a very true statement. Now let's look at option E. And option E says the granules of mast cells are endowed with both histamine and heparin, which mediate inflammation and prevent blood coagulation in vivo, respectively. Yes, that's a very true statement. You get to know that the granules of basophils, yes, upon degranulation release only histamine. But apart from releasing histamine, yes, the granules of course, the mast cells can also release what we call heparin. Histamine is very important inflammatory mediator, and that is why it's all maybe not say it means there's that kind of degranulation of these granules in there which are releasing histamine, and histamine is mediating that of these kind of inflammatory reactions. Okay, but if you take some drugs which are antihistamine, you take some drugs, then it tends to bring these things. That mean those drugs are working against histamine, degranulation of these kind of granules, okay, in the mast cell as well as, of course, in the basophil. But apart from that, degranulation, some of the granules of this kind of mast cells will also be secreting releasing what we call heparin. That heparin will ensure that you don't clot your blood in vivo inside your human body, so that your blood no bottom will flow throughout your body. I am about clot, and when the clots, what will happen is that you are likely going to die, because the blood is a very important transport medium, okay, for oxygen, for glucose, and what are the important metabolites. So justifying it, what did I say? Looking at this quite elongated structure over here, yes, having a lot of what we call cytoplasmic processes, as you can see. Okay, cytoplasmic processes, and I have a lot of talk about the endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum, actually together the free have a lot of Golgi apparatus, and apart from that, it is also going to have what you call a lot of mitochondria. That is the active form, which is going to make what we call the fibers. Okay, and that one will be the fibroblasts. That's the active form. And then the inactive form, after producing these kind of extracellular matrix by way of the fibers getting entrapped in it, and then it becomes what we call the inactive form, which we are calling it fibrocyte, with fewer cytoplasmic processes, fewer protein synthesis machinery, as well as mitochondria. So that's the quiescent form or the inactive form. Okay, but remember, we saying that it is inactive doesn't mean that it cannot produce the fibers. It may produce some, okay, by way of maintaining it. So please get to know that. So there we are. Now, I said that if you look at the lymphocytes, okay, whether small or large lymphocyte, they are capable of giving rise to this, cell, which you call a plasma cell. okay, with what we call eccentrically placed nuclei. Okay, having the nucleus is having this kind of granules over there, giving it a clock face appearance. So with time also for you to produce what we call antibodies. They are the immunoglobulins we are talking about. But of course, you know that for connective tissues, we are going to have, of course, you know, the fist cells, which is also known as the resident cells or permanent cells, or otherwise what we call the intrinsic cells of the connective tissue. And we've seen right already, that's the fibroblasts. Yes, apart from that, we know the fast cell, which is adipocytes, having peripheral placed nuclei. Okay, we've also seen that we have some kind of cells we call the mesenchymal cells, which we've seen them already, having that kind of stellate shape appearance. And then sometimes we add what we call histiocytes. Okay, histiocytes may also be added to, but of course we know that fibroblasts will be converted to become fibrocyte after making their product. But one thing is that we have other ones which are what we call the wandering cells. They are coming from the blood. And I told you, never let monkeys eat banana. So never. And for neutrophil, so let's look at neutrophil, the polymorphonuclear leukocytes, as if it's having a lot of nuclei, but no, the nucleus is actually looped, about 3 to 5 loops. But if it goes beyond, 5, then it becomes pathologic, consistent with what we call megaloblastic anemia. Then, of course, we also have, so neutrophil is the greatest, followed by lymphocyte, mononuclear. Small lymphocyte, that's a large lymphocyte, and a small lymphocyte, its nucleus is roughly the size of the adults or the mature red blood cells. That's the erythrocyte. Okay, then we also have that's the monkeys. That's the monocyte, and monocytes are going to give rise to, of course, macrophages, which are phagocytic. They are going to engulf particulate matter. But remember, even the neutrophil is also a phagocytic cell. Okay, going to engulf. So it's E for eosinophils. Okay, having this kind of orange-red granules in there. These ones, neutrophils, are having pinkish fine granules. So eosinophils over there. Then of course we also have what we call the basophils. And then basophils, although not shown here, basophils are the rarest form of white blood cell we are going to find. But mast cells, as we said, upon degranulation will either release histamine or heparin. And heparin is very important to prevent blood clotting inside the human body. So please get to know that. We go to question number 4, and question number 4 says, which of the following is incorrect about dense regular connective tissue? Now option A says, in the extracellular matrix, the collagenous fibers are densely packed and parallel to one another with little amorphous ground substance. Yes, that's a very true statement. We get to know that, yes, by way of becoming dense means that it's having a lot of collagenous fibers. Okay, dense collagenous fibers. Then apart from that, it is regular because the fibers are running parallel to one another. Okay, and then because it is, of course, a dense type, it will have little amorphous ground substance. That's a very true statement. Option B says it is likely to contain more fibrocytes than fibroblasts. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, because actually, we are saying that yes, fibroblasts will secrete fibers. Once they secrete the fibers, they will be converted to become fibrocytes. So because we have a lot of fibers, your fibers were brain, it means that a lot of the fibroblasts have been converted to become fibrocytes. So we have more fibrocytes than fibroblasts. That's a very true statement. Now option C says the main collagen protein type present is of type 1 and can be seen in the tendons and aponeurosis. Yes, that's a very true statement. You get to know, you see the collagen table later, but you get to know that yes, the main collagen type which will be present will be the type 1 collagen. Collagen you won't be breed, but this time no, we are going to see the type 1 collagen in dense regular, even dense irregular connective tissue, which we will see it in tendons and aponeurosis. So in tendons, aponeurosis, and in some ligaments, we are going to see dense regular connective tissue. We are going to see dense regular connective tissue. Now, option D says structures with this connective tissue type are essential in resisting excessive stretching and distension in several directions. Yes, they are going to resist that, but in a single direction, in a single plane only, because the fibers are running in a single direction. They are not running in different directions. Okay, please get to know that's why they are regular. Now, option E says this connective tissue may lack blood vessels and thus absent in periosteum and perichondrium. You see, yes, indeed, they are absent in periosteum and perichondrium because in these areas they should be dense irregular, not dense regular. But of course, in connective tissue, yes, generally, well, blood vessels. Internet said beneath every epithelium, there should be a connective tissue to nourish, the kind of epithelium which are above it through, of course, the basement membrane. Internal, these ones, they will not lack blood vessels. Okay, so it means that with this question, yes, the correct answer is going to be option E. Again, option E is also, D is also correct. So D and E are both, correct answer because they are both wrong statements over here. Let's justify that. So there we are. If you look at, the fibers, we're saying that we are going to, a lot of these ones, although yes, we are seeing these ones as fibroblasts, we are going to find a lot of the fibrocytes, a lot of them, okay? Having fewer cytoplasmic processes as well as protein synthesis machinery, because of course, because this dense, it has already made a lot of fibers. But look at how the fibers are run. The fibers are run in a particular fashion, parallel to one another. Therefore, they resist forces placed on them in a single direction, and it will be found mainly in, of course, tendons, aponeurosis, and then in some ligament. And then one thing is that yes, it is vascularized because most connective tissues will be vascular except in cartilages, which they will be avascular. So it is vascularized. So that's his wrong statement. Then when you look at these whitish areas represent what we call the amorphous ground substance. Again, you can see fewer cells in there, telling you that it is what? Dense. If it is loose, we are going to see a lot of cells. It is dense again because we are seeing a lot of these fibers. Remember that there is dense collagenous, but usually we don't qualify with collagenous because we know that the main fibers present will be collagenous, okay? But if it is elastic, that is where we tend to qualify it with, collagen, maybe elastic connective, but this is dense connective, tissue. The cell, fibers really packed with little amorphous ground substance. So that is what you have to know. Let's go to question number 5, and question number 5 says, which of the following is incorrect about dense irregular connective tissue? Option A says this connective tissue type is more cellular than seen in loose connective tissue areola. This is a wrong statement because the dense connective tissue, yes, the dense connective tissue fibers not also cells in the into what we are saying is that yes, if it is dense, then it is less cellular rather than in the case of loose, because loose or more cells than in the case of dense. Let's go to, so it means that with this question, the correct statement is A. The correct answer is A because that's a wrong statement. Now, option B says this connective tissue type ensures that an organ resists stress placed on it in several directions. This is a very true statement. So it will resist this tension, and stretch in what we call several directions. This connective tissue that is dense irregular because the fibers are moving in different directions. Fibers one in the east, west, north and south in several planes. So it means that yes, it's going to resist that kind of pull or stretch in several directions. That's a very true statement. Now option C says notable areas that it can be found are the submucosa of the GIT, that's the gastrointestinal tract, and the tunica albuginea of the testes. Yes, that's a very true statement. We get to know there the perichondrium, periosteum. Yes, if you look at the, yes, I will talk about the other ones, of course, because the next one is over here. We look at that. These areas will also have dense irregular connective tissue. Now let's go to option D. Now, option D says both the papillary and reticular layers of the dermis of the skin have this connective tissue type. You see, so this is a wrong statement because the papillary layer will be made up of loose connective tissue, that's areola. But reticular layer will be made up of dense, irregular collagenous connective tissue, which is consistent with this one. So by virtue of bringing papillary layer as well, that makes the statement false. So it means that in this question, there are two answers which are, which can be seen over here because they are both statements which are correct. That's option D, and then of course option A. But let's go to that of E. E says forms the capsule of solid or parenchymal organs. That's a very true statement. If we talk about solid organs or organs which are organized into functional parenchyma, we are going to find what we call capsule being the covering, the main, the capsule is going to be made of dense irregular connective tissue. So let's justify that. Now, so we see that this connective tissue, okay, is having fewer cells. These are the cells. Similarly, this one is also going to have a lot of fibrocyte and fibroblasts, and it's having a lot of collagenous fibers, but these fibers are running in different planes, They are tightly packed but run in different planes. But what we find is that we have little amorphous whitish areas. These are the ground substance. Because the fibers are run in different planes, they will be this connective tissue type will be relevant in resistant, stretch or pull, okay, or what you call resistant, excessive, what you call distension in several, directions, and may be seen, as we said, in the submucosa of GIT, not in the mucosa, because in the mucosa we are going to see lamina propria. The lamina propria is loose connective tissue, areola actually. And then, yes, we are also going to find it in what we call the tunica albuginea of the testis, as we said, periosteum, perichondrium, the reticular layer of the dermis, capsule of organs, but not the papillary layer of the dermis. Okay, so please get to know that. So let's go to question number 6. And question number 6 says, which of the following is incorrect about elastic connective tissue? Option A says, in fresh sections, the elastic fibers appear yellowish. Yes, that's a very true statement. That's why sometimes, elastic fibers can also be called, yellowish elastic fibers or yellow elastic fibers actually. Option B says, this tissue allows for recoil of structures to their original length after being stretched. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, the ability of an organ to stretch and then come back to its original position. Yes, it's by the characteristic of this connective tissue type that it has. Into organ be a while stretch, it means that it is endowed with, of course, elastic connective tissue. Now, option C says it can be seen in the tunica media of conducting arteries, and thus forms the framework for filtration of materials. Yes, indeed, that we have a type of artery that we call them conducting arteries, or the large or elastic arteries. Yes, these arteries will be endowed with elastic, connective tissue in the tunica media. In the blood vessel now, you have 3 areas. Tunica intima, baby, our blood ne bend, so it's intimately associated with the blood. Then, of course, you have a middle layer known as tunica media. Then you have the most external layer known as tunica externa or tunica adventitia. Then what will happen is that the tunica media, which generally we know that tunica media generally obeys smooth muscles, mainly smooth muscles, but in conducting arteries they will be endowed with, of course, this type of connective tissue. But indeed, it's not from the framework for filtration of material. No. In the framework, the one where you form a meshwork for filtration will be what we call the reticular connective tissue. Not this type. So it means that this statement will make that statement wrong. Okay, that is option C. So option C, we've seen our answer. That's option C. But let's move on. Option D says it is a dense type of connective tissue. That's a very true statement. That is why this connective tissue, you have to qualify it. That it is dense elastic connective tissue. You have to qualify it. Because generally, if you just say dense connective tissue, you would think it's collagenous. Because that's, the standard. But you have to qualify it by adding, elastic to it. Now let's go to option E. And option E says its system of fibers are elastin, yes, elauline, and of course oxytalan, and can be visualized using elastin special stains such as Osin. That's a very true statement. You get to know that we have, evolutionary wise, we have that system. We have elastin, yes, elauline, oxytalan, yes, and they can be visualized using special stains, elastin stains actually, such as Osin. So let's justify this. Yes, so as you can see, it is densely packed with a lot of fibers. They are the elastic fibers, and this is what we call, elastic connective tissue, dense elastic connective tissue. But you can see some yellowish areas in there. That tells you that yes, it's a fresh section. If it's a fresh section, we tend to see the fibers appear. Some yellowish areas can be seen, and we've seen that it is actually dense. Okay, densely packed, little amorphous ground substance. Fewer cells will also be present. Okay, so this organ, okay, because of the high elasticity of the elastic fibers, will be very relevant as far as recoil of structures to their original length will be concerned after being stretched. Okay, it is not forming a framework for filtration. Okay, so please get to know that. We will see that one. That will be by the reticular connective tissue. Okay, and then the system of fibers, which I'm going to show you now. The special stain that you're going to use can be something like elastin stain, which an example will be the Osin. So let me show you the system of fibers that we find. Okay, so there we are. That is what we call oxytalan, elaunin, and of course elastin, fibers. But of course, there are 2 main proteins that we are going to see there. We are going to see what we call the microfibril and of course the elastin. Okay, but the protein, so if you are having only microfibrils present, so you can see only microfibrils present, Then that one is what we call oxytalan fibers. So evolutionary wise, we have only this kind of microfibril, so that's oxytalan. Then we came to what we call elaunin, and with elaunin, what we find is that yes, although we will see what we call the microfibrils, but we have what we call patches, okay, which are irregularly placed patches of what we call elastin, which are deposited in it. That's what we call elaunin. Then in situations where we have a lot of what we call this kind of elastin, which are centrally placed with peripherally oriented what we call microfibril, then we have what we call elastic fiber. So that's the system. Okay, please get to know that. So we go to question number 7, and question number 7 says, which of the following is inaccurate regarding areolar connective tissue? So we know areola, that's a loose connective tissue actually. Now option A says it has more ground substance than fibers, which are irregularly and loosely disposed. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, by virtue of being loose, yes, or a looser, or more cells, or more ground cells, that pale staining region. And then the fibers are irregularly, yes, they don't have a particular pattern, irregularly disposed in there, okay, and they are loosely packed. They are not tightly packed. They are packing one tightly today in the case of dense connective tissue. So please get to know that. Now option B says this tissue has comparatively more fibroblasts than fibrocytes. This is a very true statement because we know that it is the fibroblasts which are going to become what we call make their fibers to become fibrocytes. But here is the case, fewer fibers are present, then it means that generally we expect to see more fibroblasts compared to fibrocytes. Into there, yes, you bring more fibroblasts than fibrocytes. So Sunday, if for more fibers, I mean the fibroblasts now I don't know who are fibrocyte. So yes, indeed, that we are going to find more of the fibroblasts than fibrocytes. Now let's go to option C. Functionally, it binds and offers nourishment due to its high vascularity. Yes, that's a very true statement. We get to know that yes, the type of connective tissue, areola, yes, beneath every epithelium is going to be there. It's going to have a lot of blood vessels, so it's going to be highly vascular, and it's going to bind structures and then offer that nourishment. Okay, so let's go to option D. Option D says it is found in the lamina propria of mucous membranes, as well as endomysium and of course endoneurium. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, in the lamina propria of mucous membrane, we get to know that mucous membrane generally will be made up of epithelium and of course lamina propria. In the GIT, we add what we call muscularized mucosa to it later on. So if you have visited that video on my postpharyngeal gut video that I've done, okay, under the systems, if you go to a playlist under the systems, histology, you can get that one. Then what we are saying is that yes, I will make another statement. The lamina, every epithelium there will be a lamina propria of loose connective, and that is what we call the areola. Now, so that's a very true statement, covering the endomysium around the muscle. Yes, microscopic aspect of the muscle, microscopic aspect of the neuron. Yes, you're going to see endoneuron. Those things are true. Now, option E says it is a type of connective tissue proper and the most widely distributed connective tissue in the human body. Yes, that is a very true statement. It's a connective tissue proper. But one thing that we find is that also papa, because almost everywhere we have mucous membrane, and beneath every epithelium there should be a that connective tissue is actually areola. Okay, just the epithelium avascular blood vessel be to nourish it, and therefore there should be what we call this kind of connective tissue, and that connective tissue is actually areola. So please get to know that. So by way of justifying what we are talking about, we can see the fibers are loosely packed. They are moving in different directions. Okay, and then we have a lot of pale staining region. That's the ground substance. Now the cells too are a lot. We are supposed to see a lot of cells over there, although this one from an artistic view is not showing a lot, but we are supposed to see a lot of these cells, and these cells, most of them will be the fibroblasts and not fibrocytes. Okay, and then one thing is that yes, we will functionally know that I'll show you the functions of this kind of connective tissue. So that is what you have to know. Finding itself, it's going to have a lot of blood vessels. You see that, and then you're going to find yourself in areas which, of course, beneath every epithelium, we're going to find it. In the lamina propria of the mucosa of tubular organs, you are going to see it. And the epithelium, you are going to find it. It's also going to cover. Yes, talk about endoneurium, endomysium. Yes, all these areas you're going to find it. Okay, but remember that it is having more cells, more ground substance than the fibers, which are loosely oriented. So there we are. Now if you look at it again, look at this one, you can see that you have a lot of cells. Now we said that beneath every epithelium, this is epithelium, separated by, of course, the base. This area is the connective tissue, and they are separated by the basement membrane, which is non-cellular area over here. There you can see the cells. The cell, we have a lot of cells over here, but the fibers, okay, fewer fibers are present. But you can see a lot of amorphous ground substance in there. That is what we call, loose connective tissue. That's areolar. Okay, and we know that beneath every epithelium there should be a connective tissue. Therefore, it is the widely distributed type of connective tissue that we have in the human body. By way of function, this loose connective tissue will be very important. Areola will be very important in providing that kind of surrounding structures and then connecting structures. Okay, providing nourishment. Okay, but generally we know the kinds connective tissue types form the framework of the body. Transport medium, of course, blood doing that. Protein delegate organ, like the bone. Okay, sometimes even the cartilage may also do that, but mainly bone. Yes, and then of course storage of triglycerides by white adipose tissue. Yes, protection. Yes, because connective tissue is generally going to have these kind of immune cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and all that. So it's going to be very important in that regard. So mainly loose connective tissue will be important in surrounding, in binding. Okay, so that's what we are going to areola. And we said that it is a connective tissue proper type. It's a connective tissue proper type. Because we know we have the embryonic connective tissue. Okay, the embryonic connective tissue being that of the mesenchymal and of course mucous connective tissue. Then apart from that, we have the adult connective tissue. For the adult connective tissue, we have the specialized connective tissue, which we'll look at in a later section, which will include the fluid type like the blood, which will include the compact type like the bone, which will include the semi-solid type, which is very pliable like the cartilage. Okay, but in the connective tissue proper, which we are saying will include what you call the loose connective tissue and of course the dense connective tissue. We've seen the dense connective tissue already. We know we have dense regular, dense irregular, and then dense elastic. Okay, the regular and irregular, they are collagenous, then dense elastic connective tissue. Then for the loose, okay, which is part of the proper, will be including areolar type of connective tissue, as well as of course adipose and of course reticular connective tissue. So that is what you have to know. You should know that yes, it's part. Areolar is part of what you call loose connective tissue proper actually. Let's go to question number 8, and question number 8 says, which of the following is false about reticular connective tissue? Now option A says it forms the structural framework or the support system of the functional parenchyma of lymphoid organs such as lymph node and the spleen. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, not only the lymph node and the spleen, even the bone marrow. Yes, even if you look at the thymus, okay, the support system is coming from actually this kind of reticular connective tissue. Even the liver, yes, these areas. Now option B says the predominant fibers called reticular fibers are of type 3 collagen and secreted by reticular cells. Yes, that's a very true statement. We get to know that there's a special type of fibroblasts, which you call them reticular cells, but some people will say reticulocytes. But usually if you talk about reticulocytes, yes, it brings that confusion, because we know that in the development of the mature erythrocyte, the final stage, the penultimate stage to erythrocyte will be reticulocyte. So usually I prefer to call it reticular cells. Okay, reticular cells. We have reticular cells. Reticular cells are a special type of fibroblast, and that one will be relevant in producing the type 3 collagen fibers. And that type 3 collagen is what we call reticular fibers. It forms that kind of meshwork, okay, which forms the framework for actual filtration. Okay, branching fibers. We will see other things. Now, option C says it is quite cellular compared to fibers. This is a very true statement, because we know that reticular connective tissue is a type of loose connective tissue. If it's a type of loose connective, then it will have more cells than fibers. That's a very true statement. Option D says the fibers are agyrophilic and cannot be visualized using routine hematoxylins and eosin stains. Yes, that's a very true statement. Yes, what we know is that yes, there and the routine hematoxylin and eosin stain, yes, the stain are collagenous fibers or collagenous fibers. But although reticular fibers or a type of collagenous fibers, which is actually type 3, or a agyrophilic or lava silver, into silver stains, heavy salt, near the best stain one. When you use the heavy salt, what they do is that they reduce that silver ion in there to silver metal, and that makes the fibers dark. And when they are dark, that is when they are able to visualize them. They show that kind of branching or branching as well. They are very, that's what they do. They form the important framework for filtration. You see that. Now option E says it is a specialized type of connective tissue and very relevant in filtration of material. That's a very true statement. Sorry, over here it is not a special type of connective tissue. Please get to know that it is not a special type of connective tissue, but rather it is a loose connective. It is part of the connective tissue proper, an ordinary connective tissue, not specialized. Okay, but it's relevant in filtration. That's a very true statement. So you've seen our answer. That is option E is our answer. Let's justify that. So there we are. Now you can see that we have a lot of cells in there, a lot of ground substance, but fewer fibers, these dark fibers over here, making it loose connective tissue. But what type of loose? And the routine hematoxin and eosin stain, we are not going to see it. And therefore, this connective tissue can only be stained. The fibers can pick up only silver stains. Okay, so silver impregnation technique is the one we employ in staining this type of connective tissue so that we can visualize these fibers, which show that kind of branching, forming a meshwork for filtration. Okay, these cells that you see over here are known as the reticular cells. And these reticular cells are a special type of fibroblasts which are going to be important in secreting this kind of reticular fibers. And these reticular fibers are type 3 collagen fibers, type 3 collagen. And one thing that we should know is that in so doing, during the staining process, what will happen is that the silver stains, this heavy metal silver solution, what will happen is other ammoniacal solutions. What we are saying is that the fibers, reticular fibers, will have to reduce that silver metal, Ag plus, to silver, that's Ag solid, and that's when we see that kind of dark areas. And we are going to see it's going to form that kind of support system for the functional parenchyma of lymphoid organs mainly. Okay, and it's going to be very important in filtration. So you see it in areas like the lymph node, the spleen, the thymus, even the liver, the bone marrow. Okay, these are areas that we are going to actually see them. So let's go to question number 9, and that's our last question. And the last question says, which of the following cannot be true? The S is supposed to be out, cannot be true about connective tissues. Now option A says they are found beneath the cellular basement membrane. Yes, although they are found beneath basement membrane is non-cellular. Basement membrane is not cellular. There are no cells over there. Basement membrane is non-cellular. So that's a wrong statement. We've seen our answer already. But let's move on. Option B says they have larger intercellular spaces and develop only from mesoderm of the embryo, just like muscle tissue. Yes, we already established that the embryo will have 3 layers. Okay, the trigeminal layer, and the embryo will have endoderm, mesoderm, and of course ectoderm. But it's only what we call the mesoderm which is going to give rise to connective tissue. And the connective tissue is coming from only mesoderm. If you mesoderm happen or to the muscle tissue actually. Muscle tissue is also coming from the mesoderm of the embryo. But connective tissue, epithelial tissue, they offer all the 3 germ layers. And of course, nervous tissue will be coming from only, ectoderm. So that's a very true statement. Let's go to option C. It says type 2 collagen fibers are seen in cartilages which are avascular. In our next section, we are going to really look at these kind of specialized connective tissue like cartilages, like bone, like the blood. Okay, so cartilages are actually avascular. The only connective tissue which is avascular. The connective tissue are only blood vessel, only cartilages. Okay, and yes, we are going to see type 2 collagenous fibers in there. Yes, that's a very true statement. Now, option D says most bacteria are endowed with hyaluronidase in their secreted product to break through the ground substance of connective tissues. Yes, that's a very true statement. A very true statement. Now, connective tissue, an important component of the ground substance is hyaluronic acid. This hyaluronic acid, yes, can be broken down by the enzyme hyaluronidase. Now, in most bacteria, which are mainly gram-positive bacteria, okay, like Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, and what have you, what we are going to say is that what they do is that they can break through what we call, they secrete what we call, hyaluronidase, the enzyme, and that one breaks through the hyaluronic acid, breaking the connective tissue and causing tissue devastation. Oh, but that's a very true statement. Now, option E says macrophages of the liver and lungs are known as Kappa cells and dust cells respectively. That's a very true statement. So macrophage, depending on the areas in the human body that we find it, to have a special type of name. So let's try and justify these ones. So there we are. We said that connective tissues are found above. So you can see there's the basement membrane, okay, separating epithelium apically or superficially from the basement membrane, which is deep to it. Okay, so there we are once again. Here we have the epithelial cells over here, and then we have the connective tissue beneath it. And it said that in between them will be what we call the basement membrane. You know the basement membrane already. It is non-cellular. There are no cells over there. And it's non-cellular. Yes, it's having two parts. The part which is closer to the epithelium, which we call the basal lamina, and then the apical portion, which is closer to, of course, the connective tissue, is what we call the reticular lamina. And we know already that the basal lamina cannot be divided into a clear area and the electron microscopy, lamina lucida, and of course the denser region, lamina densa. So please get to know that. But what we are saying is that connective tissues are found below. Yes, indeed, it's true. But the basement membrane, there are no cells over there, so it is non-cellular. But one thing is that connective tissues are coming from only mesoderm, just like the muscle tissue. Okay, please get to know that. And then what we see is that we know that there will be large intercellular spaces. Okay, the cells are widely, separated. Unlike in epithelium, where the cells are tightly packed or with little or no intercellular, spaces. Now, this connective tissue, the ground substance, amorphous ground substance, mainly hyaluronic acid that we see, will be the main component of it. A main glycosaminoglycan that we find over there, or mucopolysaccharide over there. Some bacteria have evolved to produce some kind of secretions which are endowed or which are rich in what we call hyaluronidase, and that hyaluronidase is able to break through this hyaluronic acid so that it can penetrate the connective tissue to cause a lot of devastation in there. And these bacteria are mainly gram-positive bacteria, as I mentioned. Staphylococcus, streptococcus, talk about streptomyces, and even clostridium, and these ones are able to cause that kind of tissue devastation. But one thing that you have to know is that hyaluronic acid, if you look at even the sperm cell, the acrosome of the sperm cell, it is endowed, its secretion is endowed with what we call hyaluronidase, so that it can break through the corona radiata of what we call the secondary oocyte, that's the ovum, okay, so that it can fertilize the oocyte. So please, you have to understand these kind of things. So I said that type 2, okay, collagen fiber, we are going to see it mainly in cartilages. Okay, when you look at cartilage, you look at other things, but you can visit the other video that I've done on cartilages, okay, so that you get more insight in this one. So as we said, so we have type 1 areas in the body that we have type 3, okay, with the reticular fibers, okay, reticular connective tissue. In connective tissue that we're going to type 4 in basement membrane. Yes, so we can learn about the other types of cartilages that we find. So finally, yes, one thing is that macrophages, okay, developmentally will come from the blood, okay, blood in the form of monocytes. So monocyte will give rise, monocyte will have that kind of kidney shaped nucleus, okay, and they will give rise to these macrophages. So for instance, in the skin, we call the macrophages Langerhans cells. In the liver, we call it Kappa cell. In the brain, we call it macroglial cells, one of those neuroglial cells. In the lungs, we call it dust cells or alveolar macrophages. In the bone, about up to about 40 to about 50 of these ones will fuse. Okay, but sometimes it could be lesser than this one, so they will fuse to form this kind of osteoclast. They will resorb. So macrophages of the bone is known as osteoclast. Macrophages of the cartilage known as chondroclast, and macrophage of what we call the connective tissue is what we call histiocyte. So now making the macrophage depend on area of the body, we will give it a particular name, and these are some areas of the body that we have the special names that we give to them. All right, I'm very grateful for your time this evening. Madam wanna see bebre the way team. Important a video no. So when you want your bottom, I like, and subscribe if so about my subscribe, so that yes, the time I'm started them the other videos nearby won't show a benyana ashe. Have a good night, and may God richly bless you.